My name is Rachel Lawson, and I'm 19 years old. I was born and raised in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your business, whether you want them to or not. For as long as I can remember, people around here have called me the responsible one. Not because I wanted that title, but because I had no choice. When your dad walks out before you hit kindergarten and your mom spends more time working double shifts or locked in her room than actually parenting, you learn pretty quickly that being responsible isn't a personality trait, it's survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. I guess if you're here, it's because you're curious about the most entitled thing my mom ever did. Let me take you back to where it started, to the moment I thought my life was finally going to change. Growing up, I never really had the luxury of just being a kid. While other kids were out riding their bikes or hanging out at the mall, I was home changing diapers, cooking macaroni for my little brother Josh, or helping my sister Ava with her homework. Josh is 8 now, Ava's 11, and both of them look at me more like a second mom than a sister. My mom Julie worked hard, I'll give her that. But she was always tired, always stressed, always expecting me to pick up the slack. By the time I was 12, I could pack school lunches for 3, keep a toddler from screaming during a grocery trip, and mediate playground arguments like a pro. High school was where things got even harder. I'd get up at 5 to make sure everyone had breakfast and their stuff together. Then I'd go to school, do my best to keep my grades up, and head straight to my part-time job at the diner after class. Sometimes I'd close up and get home just in time to help the kids with homework or fold a mountain of laundry. There were nights I fell asleep still wearing my work uniform, textbook open on my chest. My friends, the few I had, would ask why I never hung out or went to parties. I'd just smile and say, "I'm busy." But the truth was, I felt like I didn't belong in their world. What kept me going was the dream, my dream, of getting out. Of going to college, seeing someplace bigger, and building a life where I wasn't constantly on edge, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. School was my safe place. I loved learning. I'd stay late to help teachers clean up, not just because it was the polite thing to do, but because it gave me extra time in that world of possibilities. I devoured books, stayed up researching scholarships, and dreamed of campuses with ivy-covered walls and old libraries that smelled like history. And then came that day. The day the letter came. I'd applied to a few schools, but there was one that I'd secretly pinned all my hopes on: Greenridge University. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was respected, had a great program in education, and, best of all, it was 3 states away. I could almost taste the freedom when I imagined walking across that campus. The letter came on a Thursday. I remember it so clearly because it was one of those early spring days when the sun actually feels warm on your face after a brutal Ohio winter. I found the envelope wedged between bills and junk mail on the counter. My hands shook as I held it, and for a second I thought about not opening it, because as long as it stayed sealed, the dream was still alive. But I did open it. "Dear Rachel Lawson," it began. My eyes scanned the page so fast I almost missed it. "We are pleased to offer you admission." Froze. And then I read it again, slower this time, savoring every word. I'd gotten in. Not only that, but I'd been awarded a partial scholarship, enough to cover a big chunk of tuition. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I laughed, I cried, I spun around the kitchen like a dork. For a few minutes, I let myself believe that everything was going to be okay. That I was going to start a new chapter where I wasn't just the responsible sister, the stand-in mom, the dependable one. I was going to be Rachel. I couldn't wait to tell Mom. She came home a little later, tired from her shift at the hospital. I was bouncing on the balls of my feet, letter in hand, heart racing. "Mom, got in. Greenridge. They gave me a scholarship. This is it. This is my chance." She looked at me, blinked slowly, and set her purse down. For a moment, I thought maybe she was just too tired to process what I'd said. "We'll see," she said flatly, walking past me to check on Josh and Ava. That was it. No hug. No "I'm proud of you." No celebration. Just a cold, dismissive "we'll see." I stood there in the kitchen, the letter that felt like my golden ticket suddenly heavy in my hands. I had pictured this moment so many times. I'd imagined my mom crying tears of joy, telling me how proud she was, maybe even calling Grandma to share the news. Instead, it was like I told her I'd won a free sandwich or something. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The glow of my acceptance letter, which I'd taped to the wall in a burst of excitement, seemed dimmer now. My mind raced with questions. Why wasn't she happy? Didn't she want this for me? What did she mean? "We'll see." Deep down, though, I think I already knew the answer. Because in my mom's world, my life wasn't mine. It was hers. My time, my energy, my future. All things she believed I owed her in return for the roof over my head and the food on my plate. And if that meant putting my dreams on hold so I could keep being the built-in babysitter, the unpaid maid, the family glue, well, in her eyes, that was only fair. But standing there that day, with my acceptance letter in one hand and my mom's indifference weighing down the other, I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't let her steal this from me. At least that's what I thought at the time. What came next? That's a whole other story. But for now, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? I love knowing who's out there listening. The days after my acceptance felt like I was walking on air, at least at first. Despite Mom's chilly reaction, I tried to hold on to my joy, clinging to the dream I'd nurtured for so long. I dove headfirst into preparations. Between school and my shifts at the diner, I spent my free time researching dorm life, filling out housing applications, comparing meal plans, and poring over financial aid forms. I kept the acceptance letter pinned above my bed where I could see it every morning when I woke up, a reminder that I wasn't stuck, that I could do this. I started talking with my best friend Lila about a small get-together to celebrate. Nothing fancy, just a backyard barbecue with a few friends and maybe a cake from the grocery store. It felt good to have something to look forward to imagine one night where I wasn't a stand-in parent, where I could just be Rachel, the girl who got into college. But as I focused on my plans, the air at home began to change. First, it was small things. Mom would joke about how I wouldn't last a week without the kids. If I mentioned something about campus housing or orientation, she'd sigh loudly and say, "I don't know how you think we'll manage without you." When I started gathering my documents for the financial aid office, my tax forms, hers, anything they might need, she kept misplacing papers. I'd leave something on the counter, only to find it gone the next day. When I asked where it was, she'd shrug and say, "You're the one so eager to run off, you should keep track of your stuff." At first I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe it hadn't really sunk in yet. I convinced myself that once she saw how serious I was, how prepared I was, she'd come around. I thought maybe she just needed time. But then came the night that shattered that hope. It was late. I just finished a closing shift at the diner, and my feet ached in my worn-out sneakers. I came in through the back door expecting the usual quiet. Mom watching TV, the kids asleep. But instead, she was sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed, the letter from Greenridge lying in front of her like an accusation. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and tight. I sank into the chair across from her, feeling my stomach twist. "You're not going." The words hit me like a slap. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "What?" "You heard me. You're not going to that school." I felt my throat go dry. "Mom, I got in. I have a scholarship. I've already started." She slammed her palm on the table, making the letter jump. "I don't care. Your place is here. With this family. Your siblings need you. I need you." Her face was flushed, eyes blazing, and in that moment, she looked at me not like a proud mother, but like someone betrayed. I tried to keep my voice calm. "I'll still be part of the family. But this is my chance." "Oh, your chance," she spat, the word like poison. "Your chance to run away. Your chance to leave me holding the bag after everything I sacrificed for you. Do you think raising you was easy? Do you think I wanted to work myself to the bone every day? And now, after everything, this is how you repay me?" Her words cut deeper than I wanted them to. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "You're not going, Rachel. That's final. I won't have it. You're not leaving me to clean up the mess here while you go off playing college girl." I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded, my hands shook, and I wanted to scream, "This isn't fair." But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the table, at the acceptance letter that had once felt like a lifeline and now felt like a curse. Over the next few days, things got worse. The passive-aggressive comments turned into full-on guilt trips. At dinner, she'd sigh and mutter things like, "I guess we'll just have to figure things out when Rachel leaves us behind." Josh started clinging to me, wrapping his little arms around my waist whenever I tried to leave the room. "You're not really going, right?" he'd whisper, his eyes wide with worry. Ava, who'd always been so independent, started acting out, snapping at me one minute, bursting into tears the next. "Why don't you want to stay with us?" she asked one night, her voice trembling. "Don't you love us anymore?" I felt like I was drowning in guilt. Every time I thought about packing a suitcase, I pictured Josh's tear-streaked face. Every time I filled out a form for school, I heard Mom's voice in my head, reminding me of all she'd given up for me. And yet, deep down, a small, stubborn part of me clung to the dream. I'd worked too hard to let it slip away without a fight. But with every passing day, it felt like that fight was getting harder to win. I started staying late at school, at work, anywhere that wasn't home. Home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battleground, and I was losing. The night of the small party I'd planned, I came home to find that Mom had taken the kids out without telling me. No note, no text. Just an empty house and a melting cake on the counter. I sat there in the kitchen for hours, staring at that cake, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. By the time they came back, it was too late. The party was over before it had begun. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something I didn't want to admit. Mom wasn't just upset because she'd miss me. She didn't see my leaving as a loss. She saw it as a betrayal. And I didn't know how to fix that. I didn't know if I could fix it. If I thought things were hard before, I hadn't seen anything yet. Once my mom realized I wasn't backing down easily, she shifted gears. It wasn't just quiet guilt trips or cold stares anymore. No, now it was public. Now, it felt like the whole world had been recruited to remind me what a terrible daughter I was. It started small like everything else. The next Sunday at church, I noticed the difference. People who'd always smiled at me, who'd patted me on the shoulder and asked after Josh and Ava, suddenly looked at me like I'd grown horns. Miss Hattie, who taught my Sunday school class when I was 8, actually tooted at me as I walked by. And then came the whispers. I heard she's running off to college and leaving her poor mama high and dry. Imagine all Julie's done for her, and this is the thanks she gets. Some kids are just selfish, I guess. I kept my head down, trying not to let it sink in, but it did. It always does. I found out later that Mom had been making the rounds. At church, at the corner store, at family gatherings I hadn't even been invited to. She told anyone who'd listen that I was abandoning my family, that after all her sacrifices, working herself to the bone, raising us alone, I was throwing it all away to chase some selfish dream. She's leaving me to raise these kids all by myself, she told people, tears in her eyes. After everything I did for her, I don't know how I'll manage to work. Suddenly, I was the villain in a story I didn't even recognize. I couldn't go to the grocery store without someone giving me a look. At school, one of the moms I'd known since elementary school actually stopped me in the parking lot and said, "Your mother is a saint. I hope you realize what you're doing before it's too late." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them the truth, that for as long as I could remember, I'd been more of a parent than a daughter. I thought about all those nights I stayed up with Josh when he had nightmares because Mom was too exhausted to get out of bed. The mornings I packed Ava's lunch and braided her hair because Mom was running late for her shift. The field trips I chaperoned, the homework I helped with, the dinners I cooked. I remembered being 8 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor with a crying baby in my lap while Mom locked herself in her bedroom and blasted music to drown us out. I remembered being 12 and trying to explain to a teacher why Ava hadn't done her reading, because she'd been sick, and I'd been too busy cleaning up after her to help. These weren't things I'd done out of obligation. I loved Josh and Ava. They were my world. But I was tired. I was tired in a way that felt like it seeped into my bones. And still, the weight of those judgments pressed down on me. The worst came one night when Mom cornered me in the kitchen. She'd been out talking with one of my aunts and came back fired up, like she had her argument sharpened and ready. "I hope you're happy," she said, slamming her keys onto the counter. "You've turned everyone against me. Do you know what people are saying? That I failed as a mother. That I raised an ungrateful brat." I froze, unsure how to respond. "I didn't tell them anything," I said quietly. "No, but your actions did." Her voice rose, and I could hear Josh and Ava's footsteps upstairs as they stopped what they were doing to listen. "I've done everything for you," Mom said, voice trembling. "I gave up my life for you. I worked double shifts, I went without, all so you could have a roof over your head, food on the table. And this is how you repay me. Running off. Leaving us all behind. After all the sacrifices I made." Her eyes were red, whether from tears or anger, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. "Mom, I'm not leaving forever. I'll visit. Call. I can still help from afar." "No," she snapped. "If you leave, don't bother coming back. You'll make your choice, Rachel. And if you choose them, that school, that selfish dream, don't think you can come crawling back when it falls apart. Because I won't be here waiting." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a second I couldn't breathe. The room seemed too small, the walls closing in. I felt the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes, but I forced them back. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I whispered. She laughed, this bitter, humorless sound that echoed through the kitchen. "Well, you're doing a damn good job anyway." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was being torn in two. On one side was my dream, the future I'd worked so hard for, the life I'd imagined when I stayed up late studying while the house slept. On the other side was my family, the only home I'd ever known, even if it didn't always feel like home. And in the middle was me, confused, ashamed, and drowning in guilt. I kept asking myself, was I really being selfish? Was it wrong to want something for myself after so many years of giving everything I had? Couldn't I find a way to make everyone happy? But no matter how I turned it over in my mind, no matter how many sleepless nights I spent trying to puzzle out a solution, I kept coming back to the same painful truth. There was no way to make everyone happy. No way to chase my dream and stay shackled to the expectations that had been placed on me since I was a kid. I just didn't know if I was strong enough to choose. I spent days turning over ideas in my head, clinging to the hope that there had to be some kind of compromise. There had to be a way for me to go to college without tearing my family apart. I started gathering information in quiet moments, printing out brochures about low-cost daycare centers, jotting down numbers for after-school programs, even researching government aid for single parents. Every break at work, every lunch period at school, I filled my notebook with possibilities. I told myself that if I could just show Mom there were options, maybe she'd see that I wasn't abandoning anyone. One evening after dinner, I took a deep breath and asked her to sit down at the kitchen table with me. Josh and Ava were playing upstairs, and for a rare moment it was just the two of us. My heart raced as I pulled out my notes, laying them out like evidence in a trial. "Mom, I've been thinking about how we can make this work," I began, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound steady. "There are programs that could help. We could apply for childcare assistance. Maybe Aunt Dee could watch the kids a couple afternoons a week. She said she'd be willing if we asked." Mom didn't even glance at the papers. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, her face a mask of cold disbelief. "You think I want strangers raising my kids? Or Dee, please. She can't even take care of herself." I tried again, gentler this time. "It wouldn't be forever. Just while I'm in school. I could come home on weekends, holidays. I can still help." "No," her voice was flat, final. "But, Mom, these programs, there's help out there. We don't have to do this alone. You wouldn't be alone." She slammed her hand on the table, sending my papers scattering to the floor. "Enough. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about help. This is about family. About loyalty. About what you owe us after everything I've done." Her voice rose with every word. I could hear the thud of small feet upstairs as the kids stopped playing, listening again. "You think some piece of paper from a fancy college means more than us? Than me? After all the nights I stayed up sick, working shifts no one else wanted, just so you could have shoes on your feet? After your father walked out and left me with nothing but 3 mouths to feed? You're just like him. The first chance you get to leave, you're gone." Her words hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to deny it, but she kept going, her face flushed, tears shining in her eyes. "He left us. And now you're doing the same damn thing." "I'm not leaving you," I choked out. "I'm trying to build a future. For me, for all of us." "No," she shouted, standing so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You're trying to run away. Just like him. Don't pretend it's for anyone but yourself." The room felt too small, the air heavy and thick with anger. I felt my control slipping, my carefully rehearsed words forgotten. From the stairs I heard Ava's voice, small and scared. "Mom. Rachel. Why are you yelling?" I turned and there they were, Ava wide-eyed and trembling, clutching the banister. Josh behind her, trying to be brave but looking on the verge of tears. Before I could answer, Mom snapped. "Go back to your room. This is between me and your sister." But the damage was done. They'd heard. They'd seen. Ava's chin quivered. "Are you leaving us, Rachel? Are you gonna leave like Dad did?" Those words broke something inside me. I felt the tears I'd been holding back spill over, and I dropped to my knees, trying to gather my papers, trying to gather myself. "No, baby. I'm not. Don't lie to them," Mom spat. "Tell them the truth. Tell them you don't care about us anymore." "I do care," I cried, my voice cracking. "But I can't keep doing this. I can't stay here forever. I'm trying to have a life, Mom. I'm trying to make something of myself." The words felt hollow even as I said them. The kids didn't understand. How could they? All they saw was their sister, the one who packed their lunches, helped with homework, tucked them in at night, threatening to leave. And Mom had planted the seed in their minds that I was just like Dad, that I was abandoning them. Josh started to cry, quietly at first, then harder. Ava glared at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I hate you," she shouted before turning and running up the stairs. I sank to the floor, the weight of everything crushing me. Mom stood over me, breathing hard, victorious in her fury. "See," she said bitterly. "Look what you've done." And in that moment I wondered if she was right. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe my dream wasn't worth this pain, tearing my family apart, breaking my siblings' hearts. The future I'd imagined suddenly felt so far away, like a fantasy I no longer deserved. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the same question running through my mind over and over. Is it worth it? Is any of this worth it? I didn't have an answer. The night after that terrible fight, I couldn't stay in the house. Every room felt like it was pressing in on me, like the walls themselves were whispering my mother's accusations. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, filled with everything that hadn't been said and all the things that had. Josh's quiet sobbing from the room next door cut deeper than any words could. And Ava. The look on her face when she told me she hated me haunted me every time I closed my eyes. I grabbed my jacket and slipped out the back door without a word. The air was cool against my skin, but it felt good, like I could finally breathe again. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away, even if it was only for a little while. I walked for what felt like hours, past houses where families were sitting down to dinner, past stores closing up for the night, past the school I'd worked so hard in. The streets were quiet, and with every step, I felt the weight on my chest ease just a little. Somewhere along the way, I found myself in front of Ms. Green's house. She'd been my English teacher sophomore year, one of the first people who really believed in me. She'd encouraged me to apply for writing contests, told me my essays had a voice that mattered. Even after I left her class, she'd always asked how I was doing, always reminded me I was meant for more than this small town. I don't even remember deciding to knock on her door. My hand just moved on its own, like my heart knew where I needed to be. She opened the door, surprised but smiling. "Rachel. Honey, are you okay?" And just like that, all the strength I'd been holding on to crumbled. The tears I'd fought so hard to keep in came pouring out. Ms. Green didn't ask questions. She just wrapped me in a hug, the kind of hug that made me feel safe for the first time in what felt like forever. She led me inside, made me tea, and let me sit on her worn-out couch, wrapped in a blanket. When I finally found my voice, I told her everything. The college acceptance, the fight with my mom, the guilt that was tearing me apart. I told her about Josh and Ava, about how I felt like I was breaking their hearts, about how I was scared I was making the wrong choice. She listened without interrupting, without judging. When I was done, she sat back and looked at me with that steady, kind gaze that always made me feel like I mattered. "Rachel," she said softly, "I want you to listen to me. Your future isn't selfish. Wanting a better life isn't selfish. It's brave." I shook my head, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks. "But what about them? My mom, my siblings. I feel like I'm abandoning them." She reached out, taking my hand. "You can love them with all your heart and still choose yourself. That doesn't make you a bad daughter or a bad sister. You can't pour from an empty cup, sweetheart. If you don't take care of yourself, if you don't chase what sets your soul on fire, what kind of example does that set for Josh and Ava? That sacrificing yourself is the only way to show love. That staying small is the price you pay for loyalty." Her words settled over me like a balm, soothing the raw places inside me. "But my mom, she says I owe her this. After everything she's done." Ms. Green's voice was gentle but firm. "Your mother made her choices. She chose to have children, to stay in this town, to raise you the way she did. None of that is your fault, Rachel. None of that is your responsibility to fix. You've been carrying a weight that isn't yours to bear. It's time to set it down." I sat with that, letting it sink in. All my life, I'd believed that love meant sacrifice. That to be a good daughter, a good sister, I had to give up what I wanted. But maybe that wasn't true. Maybe love could look different. Maybe love could mean showing Josh and Ava that it was okay to dream big, to want more, to leave when you needed to. I stayed at Ms. Green's that night. She offered me the spare room, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept without the weight of guilt crushing me. In the morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds singing outside the window. The world felt a little brighter, like maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. I sat with Ms. Green at her kitchen table, sipping coffee, watching the sunlight stream through the curtains. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath. "I'm going to go," I said. "I'm going to college, even if my mom doesn't support me. Even if it means leaving without her blessing." Hurt to say. It hurt more to imagine doing it. But deep down I knew it was the right choice. I thought of Josh and Ava and how much I loved them. I thought of how I wanted them to grow up knowing it was okay to want more, to build a life that made them happy. And I thought of my mom and how much I wished she could understand, but realizing that even if she never did, I couldn't let that stop me. When I left Ms. Green's house, the world looked different. The streets were the same, the houses were the same, but I wasn't. Felt stronger, more certain. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew there would be more fights, more tears. But I also knew this. I was done apologizing for wanting a future. I was done letting guilt hold me back. I was going to leave. And I was going to make something of myself. Not just for me, but for the little girl I used to be, the one who dreamed of more. And for the siblings who were watching, who needed to see that dreams could come true, even when it was hard. That was the decision I made. And this time I wasn't going to look back. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? That morning, as I walked home from Ms. Green's, I felt the sun warm on my face, the first warmth I'd felt in days. My heart was still heavy, but it was no longer weighed down by confusion. I knew what I had to do, even if the road ahead was going to be rough. The house came into view, and I paused at the end of the street, staring at it like it was a place I barely recognized. Inside were the people I loved most in the world. But also inside were the chains I'd been trying so hard to break free from. The decision wasn't easy, but it was mine, and for the first time that felt like enough. Packing felt like tearing pieces of myself apart. Every shirt I folded, every book I slid into my worn-out duffel, felt like a betrayal. The room I'd lived in my whole life, the small, cracked dresser, the posters I'd put up as a kid, the faded curtains, watched me with silent judgment. I kept pausing, fingers hovering over a photo, a keepsake, a note from Ava or Josh. I wanted to take them all, as if they could somehow make this easier, but there was no room for everything. There was no room for the life I'd lived and the life I was about to begin. I tried to pack quietly. I didn't want to stir the storm that I knew was still simmering under the surface. My mother had barely spoken to me since the night I returned from Ms. Green's. When she did, it was cold, clipped, and filled with unspoken anger. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the explosion that would come when I finally walked out the door. The morning I was supposed to leave, I woke up early, heart pounding. I had planned every detail. I would take the bus into the city where orientation started. My bags were packed, my documents in a folder I kept by my side. I moved around the house like a ghost, trying to avoid waking anyone. But of course it couldn't be that easy. When I went to grab my folder from the table where I'd left it the night before, it was gone. Panic rose in my throat. I tore through the room, checking under cushions behind furniture. My acceptance letter, my scholarship paperwork, my ID, everything was in that folder. I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like it was any other day. My folder sat beside her, untouched. "I need that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't look at me, just stared out the window at the yard I'd mowed 1,000 times. "I called them," she said finally, her voice flat. "Told them you wouldn't be coming." I froze, my stomach twisting. "No, you didn't." "I did. Someone had to tell them the truth. That you've got responsibilities here. That you can't just run off and leave your family behind." The room spun. I grabbed the folder, clutching it to my chest like a lifeline. "You had no right," I whispered. She turned then, her eyes cold, hard. "I have every right. I'm your mother." I didn't have time to argue. I didn't have time to cry. I just ran out the door, down the porch steps, my bag bumping against my side. I didn't stop until I reached the bus stop. The wait felt endless. Every second, I half expected to see her car pull up, for her to drag me back home. But she didn't come. When the bus finally arrived, I climbed aboard, breathless and shaking. As it pulled away, I pressed my forehead to the window, watching my town shrink into the distance. And then I cried. Silent tears at first, then harder, until I had to cover my mouth so no one would hear. The hardest part wasn't leaving the town. It was leaving them. I thought about Josh and Ava. Neither of them had come downstairs that morning. Maybe they were asleep. Maybe they were avoiding the goodbye. Maybe Mom hadn't told them I was leaving today. But as the bus turned onto the highway, I thought I saw a flash of a figure at the edge of our yard. Josh, maybe, standing there in his pajamas, watching the bus disappear. I'll never know for sure. College was everything I dreamed of and nothing I expected. The campus was beautiful. Brick buildings with ivy climbing the walls, students laughing, music floating through open windows. But I felt like an outsider, carrying my guilt like an extra bag slung over my shoulder. My roommate introduced herself with a bright smile. She asked where I was from, what I wanted to study. I answered, but my mind was still back home, wondering if Ava had eaten breakfast, if Josh had made it to school on time, if Mom had cooled down or if she was still fuming. That first night, I lay in my dorm bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. I should have felt free. I should have felt excited. And I did, a little. But mostly, I felt like I'd left pieces of myself behind that I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. But I also knew this. I was here. I had made it. And no matter how much it hurt, I wasn't going to waste this chance. It's been almost 2 years since I stepped onto that bus, clutching my bag and my folder of documents like they were the only things holding me together. 2 years since I left behind the only home I'd ever known. 2 years since I made the hardest decision of my life. And now, sitting here at my favorite spot on campus, a quiet bench under a giant oak tree, overlooking the quad, I can finally breathe deeply and tell you where I am now. I won't lie to you. The first few months were brutal. I missed home in ways I couldn't have imagined, even after everything that happened. I missed Josh's goofy grin when I helped him with his math homework. I missed the way Ava used to curl up next to me on the couch while I read. I even missed the small familiar things. The creak of the floorboards outside my room, the smell of Mom's coffee in the morning, the sound of the screen door slamming when the wind caught it. But mixed in with that longing was a strange new feeling. Relief. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been, how much I'd been holding my breath for years, until I didn't have to anymore. School wasn't easy. Between classes, a part-time job at the campus bookstore, and trying to keep my head above water emotionally, I had plenty of nights where I sat in my dorm room wondering if I'd made the right choice. There were moments when I questioned everything, when my mother's words would echo in my head, accusing me of selfishness, betrayal. But for every one of those moments, there were 10 where I felt a kind of quiet pride. When I aced a paper or made a new friend, or sat in a lecture hall listening to a professor speak about something I loved and realized, this is what I was meant to do. This is what I fought for. I've learned so much more than what's in my textbooks. I've learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. That love without respect for yourself will hollow you out. That just because someone raised you doesn't mean they own you. It took me a long time to believe that I wasn't a terrible daughter, that wanting a life of my own didn't mean I didn't care about my family. But I see that now clearly. I know that my mother's entitlement, her belief that I owed her my future, wasn't love. At least, it wasn't the kind of love that nurtures and supports. It was a love tangled up in her own pain, her own fear, her own regrets. And none of that is mine to carry anymore. As for my family, well, it's complicated. My mother didn't speak to me for nearly a year. No calls, no messages, nothing. First, it crushed me. Every holiday that passed without a word from her felt like a fresh rejection. But over time, I started to see that silence as space. Space for me to grow. Space for me to start healing. Eventually, I got a text from Josh. It was simple. "Hey, I miss you." I cried when I saw it. We started talking little by little. He's old enough now to understand more of what happened, and he told me he's proud of me. He said he didn't get it then, but he gets it now. That meant more to me than I can ever say. Ava's younger, and it's been harder with her. I think she felt abandoned in a way that's hard to undo. But I send her birthday cards, little care packages, notes with stickers and books I know she'll like. And I hope one day she'll see that I didn't leave because I didn't love her. I left because I did. My mother, she's still angry, I think. Or maybe she's hurt. Or maybe both. I don't really know. We've exchanged a few strained messages, mostly about practical things. Forms she needed my signature on, or updates about the house. I've let go of hoping for an apology. I don't think it will come. And that's okay. I've learned that closure doesn't always come in the form of the words we want to hear. Sometimes closure is something we give ourselves. I'm doing well in school. Better than I ever imagined I could. I've made friends who feel like family, professors who mentor me, a community that sees me for who I am, not just what I can do for them. I've started writing again. Essays, poems, stories. And it feels like finding a part of myself I thought I'd lost. When I look ahead, I see possibility, not just duty. And that's worth everything I went through to get here. If you're watching this because you're in a situation like mine, if you feel trapped between what your family demands and what your heart longs for, I want you to know something. You are not selfish for wanting more. You are not ungrateful or cruel or wrong for dreaming of a life where you get to be whole. Loving your family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself at the altar of their needs. You deserve a future. You deserve joy. You deserve to take up space in this world on your own terms. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done. But staying would have broken me. And I choose survival. Choose hope. Choose me. And you can too. So, before you go, if my story resonated with you, take a second to like this video and subscribe. But only if you truly feel connected to what I share here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Let's remind each other that no matter where we come from, no matter what we're facing, we're not alone.